Hi, Penny Carlson from Topics in Digital Photography. I think we all had a great time at the long exposure workshop the other night. And one thing we did was prove an old cliche wrong, and that's that the camera doesn't lie. These photos by Akshay Roy were taken with just one exposure on the camera, so no real tricks. And there's no doctoring in Photoshop. I really did appear twice in one photo and looked sort of ghostly. Here I appear 3 times in one photo. So either I really do talk to myself and there's more than one of me, or the camera in fact does lie. So how did we do this? Well, let's look at the settings on Akshay's photograph. We go down to additional information, click this show more, and we can see that this was a 15-second exposure. So the way we got many me's was for me to walk around the room, and while I was walking around the room, you can see there's a flash in my hands, and I just flashed myself at multiple points in the room. The other thing we did was fool around with glow sticks, and we captured this particular picture by tossing the glow sticks in the air in an arc formation. We have multiple glow sticks here. Now I really like this photo. It's a cool photo. I'm going to show you how you can improve this photo by using Lightroom. You can also use Adobe Camera Raw to do the same processing. So I've got some photos taken by Akshay Roy and Sabrina Ayub. We're going to work on them in Lightroom to show you how to improve them a little bit. First, let's make a collection so we can find these photos and get back to them at any point in time. So I'm going to go down to my collections, hit the plus sign, create a collection. I'm going to call the collection LE for Long Exposure Workshop. I'm back to where the pictures are, and I want to work on these 3. So these are the 3 I'm going to put in the collection. So I'm going to select them, and I'm just going to move them to this collection. So now I can get back to them at any point in time. And you can see I have the picture in here, double click it, showing me talking to myself. Go back to the tab view, and first let's work on this rainbow photo by Akshay. I really like this photo. It's subtle. The background's nice and dark. That was an issue with some of the other photos, and we'll look at how to maybe make the background a little bit darker with Sabrina's photo. But what I'd like to do is get this rainbow to pop a little bit more. And these were some glow sticks that were on the floor. They could be cool. You could decide whether or not you like that. But I'm going to take them out of the photo because I just want to concentrate on this rainbow. So let's go to our Develop module. And I want to take our left sidebar off so we've got a little bit bigger picture, but keep our right sidebar on. We'll go to Develop. And this is pretty quick. This is really different from the sunset photo that we worked on in our previous Lightroom video, in that you don't want to start out with the auto mode, because look what happens when you go to auto. Oh my God, there's actually people in this photo. You can see it over there. This is not how I want the photo to look. We can go to our history over here and just take it back to the import, or we could do undo. And really what I want to do with this photo is just kind of bring this rainbow out a little bit. And I'm going to get rid of these little light sticks down here. So maybe I want to bring the contrast up a little bit. It's making it darker, but we should be able to work with that by fooling with the highlights and shadows. These ones down here, and maybe you want to fool with your exposure a little bit. This exposure is actually pretty dark. If you have some white stuff in the background, you might actually want to bring your exposure down, even though when we look at our histogram we see that everything is in the left side of the diagram. So for a normal photo we want to bring our exposure up, but we want to hide most of the stuff in the photo. We want to have black clipping. As we see, we've got tons of black clipping, but we want that because we want our background to be dark. And in Photoshop you could just select the rainbow and work with it, but it's a lot easier to work with it in Lightroom, and it's really not necessary for this particular photo to go and try to do fairly complex selections. We can just fix it in Lightroom. So we're going to go down. We want to bring up our highlights in this. How much? I don't know, maybe even all the way up. I think it looks better if we bring it all the way up. We're getting a little white stuff in here, which I don't like, but we can fix that later. I'm going to probably bring my shadows down a little bit more, and that gets rid of some of that white over there. I will use my Alt key to see where I get clipping on the highlights. click the Alt key and move it over. And what I want to do is just start to get some clipping on my rainbow. I don't worry about it anywhere else. So let me show you. I'm not worrying about the glow sticks at the bottom down in here because I'm going to get rid of them later. So I'm going to bring it up just to where I start to get it on my rainbow. So that's good. And if you want to look at the before and after, here's the before, here's the after. Just brings the brightness up a little bit. And then with the blacks, I probably don't have to really fool with it on this. If anything, I'm going to bring them down a little bit more to get rid of any of my background in here. Now what I want to do with this is get rid of these glow sticks in here. And to do that, I'm going to use my spot removal tool. Now you notice on the spot removal tool you have heal and clone. Normally I use heal. It helps blend your background a little bit better. And probably heal's just fine for this. You could probably also use clone on this. We can try it. And what clone does is rather than blending your spot with your background is it completely replaces it with the background. So that might work better in this case. We just want the black to replace this. Click on it. It picks a spot. I want the spot to be nice and black. Okay, that spot it picked looked fine. I don't know why it went all the way over there. I'm going to bring it a little bit closer. Looks fine. And I'm going to close that. And we see we got rid of our little lights on the bottom. So that's probably all I really need to do with that. We could try bringing our saturation up a little bit. And with this, I'd probably just deal with the saturation rather than the clarity because we're dealing with a fairly small band of light. And it's not colors that our eyes are used to working with. So we can move them around and play with them a lot, and it's not going to look unreal. And I really like the saturation brought up even to 90 or so here. It looks pretty good. Okay, we could quit here. I don't see any issues with noise in this picture, even though Akshay used a bridge camera, which could have problems with noise in the dark, but I think he took it at an ISO of around 100, so no real issues with noise. But if any of you do have noise problems with the photos that you took that night, you can be very heavy-handed with your noise reduction. Because this isn't a photo that you can notice whether it's sharp or not. In fact, the lights are blurring from movement. We took this particular photo by throwing a handful of glow lights in an arc. And you can see if I put my noise reduction all the way up, it doesn't particularly blur the photo. So don't be afraid to be quite heavy-handed on your noise reduction. I don't think sharpening will really do anything to this photo. Maybe it brought out our colors just a little bit. So I'll sharpen it a touch. Alright, and the last thing I'm going to do is just work on this place in here where there's a little bit of white showing through. And to do this, I'll come back up and I'll use our adjustment brush. Alright, I'm going to reset everything. And I'm going to make sure my auto mask is on because that'll help us not hit the rainbow. We don't want to select the rainbow. I don't want my density to be all the way up in this. I want it to be a little subtle. I'm going to feather it some, about halfway, so if I do hit the rainbow, it's not going to totally darken that particular area. Let's bring our size up a little bit. That looks about right. And I've noticed in some of my videos that brush size I'm working with when I do the screen capture sometimes looks a little bit smaller. I'm just going to take this brush and go over this part right in here where I've got a little bit of white. If I want to see what I've just done, I can hit that O. That looks pretty good. I'll hit the O again. And I'm just going to bring my exposure down in that particular area. And maybe bring my shadows down a little bit too. And that's it. It looks a heck of a lot better. So nice job, Akshay. I really like this photo. If we want to look at the before and after, we can simply click on our import and see what it looked like before we worked on it in our history panel. And to look at the after, we can just click on the last move that we made. And that is the really nice thing about Lightroom that Adobe Camera Raw just doesn't offer. We can actually see what happened in every step of this photo as we go. And we can revert to any step if we want to take it back a little bit. There are sort of ways to do that in Adobe Camera Raw that I haven't dealt with yet. This is the reason why I like Lightroom a lot better than Adobe Camera Raw. Alright, let's go back to our library mode. We'll look at our photos again. I'm going to bring this one in by Sabrina Ayub. And Sabrina said, hey, my photos looked really good in the camera, but then when I got them back and put them on the computer, I had this background in here. Well, this is going to be a little harder to completely fix, especially just using Lightroom. If we wanted to spend a lot of time with this photo in Photoshop, we could actually select out all the areas in the background and make them a lot darker. But it is pretty time consuming. We could do it perfectly if we wanted to spend the time. Alright, so I'm going to take this picture into the develop mode. Click on our panel there. Yeah, let's just hit the auto for laughs and you'll see all the people in the photo. We took this photo by throwing the light sticks up in the air and trying to let them twirl, and you can see there are a couple people on the side here that are actually throwing the light sticks. So we don't want our photo to look like this. Really, the best way to have dealt with this issue is to have had a better background. And if you want to try this at home, a good way to set up a nice background for something like this would be to simply hang some black sheets up or some type of black cloth and not have the room as your background. But we should be able to make this photo look a lot better. So let's go back on our history panel to the import. We definitely don't want to increase the exposure on this photo. In fact, we might want to decrease it a little bit. There you go. That helps with your background quite a lot. The problem now is that your lights aren't showing up so well. We can improve that by increasing our highlights a bit. We can decrease our shadows. That did a pretty good job right there dealing with our background. Let's use our Alt key and get our whites up to the point where we're just starting to see some spots. That made our lights a little bit brighter. We can bring our blacks down a little bit here. And we're not even going to look at clipping with the blacks. We've got lots of clipping with the blacks because our background's black. Which is fine because I want a dark background. Let's bring our saturation up. Yeah, that looks really nice. It's looking good right here. Let's bring the exposure up just a little bit. So maybe I don't want to take my exposure down quite so much. And maybe I want to try to deal with some of these issues in here. Truthfully, you could deal with this stuff a little easier in Photoshop, I think, than Lightroom. And it is a little touchy to deal with, but what we're going to do is use this adjustment brush. We're going to take this adjustment brush, and we may have to make it smaller at points, and we're going to go in some of these areas where we can see our background. I'm going to make it smaller here, either by reducing the size or by clicking the left bracket key until I can go up in this area. Got a little bit of a feather on it. And if I want to see where I'm painting, I can just hit the O key. That's probably a good thing to do right now while I'm painting this. I especially want to go down here. Up in here I've got some issues, and especially I want to get rid of that line in there. Make my a little bigger, hit the right bracket. Maybe I want to make my feathering a little bit heavier. So if I do get it over on the green a little bit, it's going to feather it, or on the red in here. Actually, over in here, I can get rid of stuff. I can be a little more heavy-handed over in here. Just make it smaller again. You could actually spend a whole lot of time if you wanted to make this perfect. Probably just with what I did, I especially concentrated on the areas where I could see some lines. There's some stuff over here I want to deal with. Okay, probably just what I did here. Let's take the O's out. And what we're going to do now, and again, this is a really nice thing about Lightroom because you can make your selections, and you can't really do this in Photoshop. And then you can fool around with your sliders and see what's going to happen. And what I want to do is decrease the exposure, probably decrease the shadows, make them even darker. And I did get rid of most of my background here. I think it looks pretty good. Now I do still have some lines where my lights are kind of interacting with my background. We could deal with them on Photoshop, but I think with just spending a couple of minutes on this photo, we made it look a lot better. You could look at when it came in. You could look at, just take this off. So this is when it came in. You can really see some of the background in there, and you can look at our final photograph. And we've really gotten rid of a lot of that distracting background.